Far off Scotland's western coast, where the North Atlantic unleashes its fury, stand the jagged cliffs of Eilean Mor. Waves taller than houses crash against black rocks, sending salty spray high into the storm-laden sky. And there, clinging to the highest point like a stubborn sentinel, stands the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. Its white tower rises defiantly against brooding clouds, a solitary outpost in one of Earth's most remote corners. Imagine the isolation, weeks without seeing another human soul, surrounded only by the endless, churning sea. This was no ordinary job, but a posting that tested the very limits of human endurance. 3 men answered that daunting call in December 1900. First, Thomas Ducat, the principal keeper, a seasoned veteran with kind eyes etched by years of salt winds. Then James Ducat, his steady assistant, meticulous and reliable. And finally, Donald MacArthur, the occasional keeper, a sturdy man with a gruff voice who grumbled about leaving his family but knew his duty. Their world became the lighthouse's cramped quarters. Every 4 hours, like clockwork, one would climb to the lantern room to tend the great light. They recorded weather in precise script, maintained brass fittings until they gleamed, and shared simple meals in the tiny galley. 3 lives bound together against the vast emptiness. As the winter solstice crept closer, a fragile rhythm settled in. Thomas Ducat would sit by the small window, penning letters home by lamplight, his face softening as he wrote of his children. James Marshall would meticulously update the logbook, noting wind shifts and barometric pressure with unwavering focus. And Donald MacArthur? He'd polish the lens yet again, muttering to himself, "Another week stuck on this godforsaken rock." Outside, the sky darkened earlier each day. The sea grew restless, and on the horizon, ominous banks of cloud began to gather, silent harbingers whispering of change. December 12th, 1900, the scheduled day for communication with the mainland. Through the crackling static of the telegraph, Thomas Ducat's voice sounded clear, if weary. "All normal here," he reported, the words punctuated by the distant howl of wind already building around the tower. No hint of alarm, just the routine assurance. But the weather had other plans. Fierce gales churned the sea into a boiling cauldron, forcing the relief ship carrying their replacements to turn back. News crackled back to Eilean Mor. Their tour was extended, stuck for longer, with only the gathering storm for company. Then it hit, December 14th. The legendary storm descended with monstrous fury. Scientific records tell us waves reached over 60 feet. Titans of water that dwarfed the lighthouse itself. The wind screamed like a banshee through every crevice of the tower. Inside, the 3 keepers battled the chaos. Brass instruments rattled on shelves. Crockery smashed in the galley. Donald MacArthur shouted over the din, "Hold the door!" as they strained against the heavy oak, seawater already seeping beneath it. The entire structure groaned and shuddered, a tiny bastion of light trembling under the Atlantic's full, terrifying wrath. Inside the lighthouse, Keeper James Marshall made his final entries in the logbook. On December 12th, his trembling hand wrote, "Severe winds, never seen such a storm." You can almost hear the gales howling outside as you read those desperate words. The next day, December 13th, a more disturbing note. Ducat quiet, MacArthur crying. What haunting silence must have filled that tower between the shrieks of the wind. Then, 2 days later on the 15th, an eerie calm settled over the page. Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. That last phrase hangs heavy in the air, less a declaration of faith than a whispered farewell. What happened after Marshall closed that logbook forever? Imagine the possibilities. Perhaps a monstrous rogue wave rose from the deceptively calm sea, taller than the lighthouse itself, crashing down with apocalyptic force. Or consider local fishermen's tales of strange lights dancing near Eilean Mor that week. Could something otherworldly have descended upon those men? Then there are the reports of unidentified boats lurking near the island. Did unwelcome visitors approach under cover of darkness? Whatever occurred in those silent hours remains locked in the island's rocky heart. Meanwhile, the relief ship Hesperus fought the same brutal storms that had battered Eilean Mor. Captain Harvey paced his deck, anxiety growing with each failed attempt. Twice they battled toward the island, and twice the furious seas drove them back to port. Picture those sailors straining against the wheel as mountains of black water crashed over the bow. Every hour lost widened the window of mystery. By the time they could sail, the keepers had already been alone for 10 desperate days. The very storms they'd come to relieve had become their jailers. December 26th dawned gray and bitter as the Hesperus finally neared Eilean Mor. Through the spray, Captain Harvey scanned the lighthouse tower. No welcoming flag flew against the leaden sky. No figures waved from the gallery. Only the crash of waves answered their horn blasts. A cold dread settled over the crew as they lowered a boat into the churning water. Rowing through surging waves that threatened to swallow them whole, the boarding party approached the silent island. The lighthouse door stood shut like a sealed tomb. On the island's western cliffs, the rescue party found nature's violence made manifest. Iron railings lay twisted like licorice sticks, torn clean from concrete moorings 110 feet above the sea. Heavy storage boxes lay shattered like eggshells, their contents strewn across the rocks. Coils of rope, thick as a man's arm, lay scattered like discarded threads. This wasn't storm damage. This was devastation on an unimaginable scale. Something colossal had risen from the deep, higher than any wave ever recorded, and smashed into Eilean Mor with the force of a falling mountain. Whatever happened here, it left scars deeper than the ocean. Captain Harvey and his men pushed open the lighthouse door, finding it strangely unlocked. Inside, an eerie stillness hung in the air. Their lanterns swept across the undisturbed living quarters, except for one overturned chair near the table. There, a cold meal sat untouched, as if someone had risen mid-bite. And on the wall, the clock's hands stood frozen at 2:15, marking the last moment of normalcy in this forsaken place. The search team moved with methodical dread. They noted the keeper's heavy coat still hanging by the door, unthinkable for a December departure. Oilskins remained neatly folded, beds unmade as if sleep had been interrupted. Most chilling of all, no distress signal had been sent, no note left behind. Maps spread across tables showed desperate search patterns, tracing every treacherous cove and cliff of the lonely island, yielding nothing but questions. At the 1901 investigation, fishermen gave uneasy testimony. One old salt muttered about strange lights dancing on the waves that night. Experts argued fiercely. Could storm damage at the West Landing explain 3 men vanishing? The newspapers seized the mystery with bold headlines. Keepers spirited away, and Sea Swallows 3 souls, amplifying the puzzle into a national obsession that no official report could satisfy. Then came the whispers of older terrors. Locals spoke of the Phantom of the 7 Hunters, a vengeful spirit from Celtic lore said to drag men into the mist. Tales surfaced of disappearances dating back to Viking longships that dared anchor here. The camera of our mind's eye now pans across ancient stone shelters half buried in the cliffs. their empty doorways like screaming mouths in the island's perpetual fog. Silent witnesses to centuries of vanishing. Others pointed to earthly conspiracies. British warships had conducted secret exercises nearby. Could foreign spies have landed? The lens shifts to coded messages intercepted that winter. Grainy photos of suspicious vessels. Might the keepers have witnessed something classified? A clandestine operation requiring permanent silence. The theory hung in the air like gunsmoke, plausible yet impossible to prove. Finally, the simplest horror, human nature itself. Keeper MacArthur had a violent past. Could months of isolation have ignited old demons? We imagine the crushing weight of winter confinement, the infamous cabin fever that drives men mad. The scene cuts between family portraits found in the Lighthouse, smiling wives, children's drawings, and the hollow bunks where those loved ones waited in vain. Did a drunken argument escalate? A terrible accident covered up by panicked survivors? The empty chairs seem to hold their breath, guarding the darkest answer of all. And modern science offers a chilling explanation. Computer simulations now show how a rare phenomenon called the Three Sisters, a sequence of colossal waves, could have occurred that December day. Imagine this. A first massive wave slams against the western platform, soaking the men. Before they can react, a second, even larger wave crashes over the 200-foot cliffs, sweeping them into the churning abyss. This CGI reconstruction, based on cutting-edge wave research, paints a terrifyingly plausible scenario. The sheer power of the sea, amplified by freak conditions, overcoming even that towering perch. But the official records raise troubling doubts. Northern Lighthouse board logs show strange gaps and inconsistencies around the time of the disappearance. Why were entire pages possibly removed? As we see these redacted documents, the questions grow louder. Was there a deliberate cover-up? Did authorities, perhaps fearing public panic or liability, hide critical safety lapses or warnings ignored? The incomplete paper trail leaves a shadow of suspicion over the tragedy, suggesting human error might have compounded the fury of nature. The mystery draws researchers back to Eilean Mor even today. Armed with drones mapping the cliffs and sonar scanning the depths, they search for answers. Their findings add weight to the wave theory. Erosion patterns high on the western rocks show scars consistent with colossal, repeated water impacts. And far below, underwater footage reveals potential debris fields. Fragments of metal, perhaps remnants of railings or equipment ripped away, scattered across the seabed near the base of the cliffs. The ocean floor holds silent testimony. Yet contradictions linger like the island's mist. Why were the men's heavy coats left behind inside, as if they'd stepped out unprepared for the cold? Why were no bodies ever recovered from the notoriously churning waters around the Isles? Could a combination of factors, a rogue wave, plus some crucial mistake, like leaving a door unsecured during inspection, explain everything? And hauntingly, doubts persist about the final, frantic log entries themselves. Were they genuine distress signals or something else entirely? The pieces don't quite form a complete picture. Now, Eilean Mor stands silent, its lighthouse fully automated. No human keeper braves its isolation. As twilight deepens over the lonely island, the beam cuts through the gathering dark, a lonely sentinel. A simple memorial plaque bears the names of Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur, the men who vanished. Their disappearance remains one of the sea's most haunting enigmas. It endures because it speaks to our deepest fears, the awesome, indifferent power of nature, the fragility of human presence against the vast, uncaring ocean, and the chilling possibility of simply vanishing without a trace.